Welcome to selfdiscoveryradio.com, where the orchard of wisdom is just ready for picking. We celebrate your why, the journey that you've taken that inspires someone else. We support your services, we support your story. Come and be our guest, become a host, be an author with us. Come and see what we've got. Our next show is... Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Building Your Business. I'm your host, Sara Troy, and my guest today is Christopher Bauer. He has a very, very interesting idea. Terra Floor Plans, hexagrams joined together that create combined housing that not only takes up less land, but it also builds a community. This is something that we're really going to today, is that people are so tired of being isolated. They don't want to be stuck over here and stuck over there and not knowing who their neighbor is, nor do they want to be put into a great big, huge, enormous block where everybody is just the same in their own little ticky-tacky houses. Something that has character, that can really actually be built around the needs of the people, create a community where people, both seniors and young, can be together and actually have a meeting place where they can communicate. There are so many options to this. There's so many ways that this can be done. And although he is here in Victoria, BC, in Canada, this plan can be taken anywhere in the world. He's stoked about it. He's driven. He really wants to see this out there, and he's inviting the people out there, the builders, the city planners, the senior home people, the people who want to see housing for the young, because we know there is a housing shortage out there. He's inviting anybody who's able to see the plan and see the possibility and just to see it being built, because it makes sense. So we're going to dive into the details of it today. What does it really mean? Does it mean to society? How does this work? How does it go together? How is it economical? And to a point, how is it ecological? And most certainly what we need to look at is the consciousness of community, because people are hungry for that. They're hungry for that connection of feeling like they know their neighbor. And especially when you bring seniors and young people and families together, we're bringing people together instead of dividing. And everybody benefits from that. So let's take the journey with Christopher and find out exactly how this came about, where he wants to see it go, and exactly how it can be adapted to the needs of what is needed. Welcome to the show, Christopher.
Thank you for the welcome, Sarah. Great introduction.
Thank you. Now I have the glasses on, folks. They will come off because I know I'm reflecting right now, because I really want to actually look at some of the wording and some of the plans that he's got here, because I'm just going to read a little bit here. It's a versatile design to accommodate the community and adaptable to be changed in 10 years without having to rehire a designer. Family comes first. They have a 2 to 3 bedroom units that are designed for families being around 1,000 square feet. Student living is possible with 500 square foot studios, and it can be built from a 2 to a 6-9 unit building to a 10-story 54 to 57 unit building with over 270 different interior layouts. The building footprint is around 7 square feet, which is possibly 0.167 acres. So it just shows of how little space it really needs and how much can go on there. But the difference between this is the fact that it is built for community, that it is actually built for the beautiful ability of bringing people together, rather than this kind of, we're really not into the big, huge block. I don't know who you are, lost in this maze of housing. We really do want to go into community where we do know our neighbors. And you've designed this with that in mind, haven't you?
Yes, I actually designed it with insight from the CEO of BC Housing, Shane Ramsey, who I was directed to by Lisa Helps, the mayor of Victoria. She put me in contact with him, and I ended up reaching out initially for showing him my green, sustainable single-family house designs, and he's the one who said we need more multi-family, multi-unit. And then this is, after doing some research, this is my interpretation of what multi-family, multi-unit should be.
Right.
Because all the current multi-family, multi-unit buildings just like single family homes today are built one way and one
Mm-hmm.
way only. And if you want to modify them, it's costly, it's expensive. This takes the costs out of the renovation costs, well, design renovation costs out of it,
Mm-hmm.
and makes it easier to go forward if the building needs to be changed. That's where the versatility and the adaptability comes in.
But it's also the looks of it. You've designed it as a hexagram.
Honeycomb.
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 And the whole thing about that is that it's just more aesthetically better looking, more invitational, feels less like a block, and in the design, or already when you see it, because you can do a couple of these on just a two kind of regular family lot.
Yeah, it could fit on residential lot. It depends on what the lot coverage zoning bylaws are.
Mm-hmm.
Depending, because some communities you can only use like 30 to 40%, others it might be higher. But if you have a larger, like an acreage parcel, you could potentially get 4 of these buildings on it and still have lots of green space for the community, which is win-win.
Right, exactly. And I was, because I've done so many shows with like Alzheimer's or mental challenges, and we're looking at, instead of the cost of having to have somebody go and live with somebody in the home for Alzheimer's, of actually creating, quote, the village, where you had different people at different levels, where they actually can do their own gardening or do some chores, and then the people that are there to monitor and look after them also live there, and it creates a community where they feel independent, where they feel they can contribute, but it also is so much more cost effective on the people that are there to help look after them, rather than just being in their homes. There's so, from obviously from my aspect, I'm seeing it on so many different levels. You're elderly, but instead of just elderly, having it with the young people, so that you have the young children actually integrating with the seniors. And we know that that makes the seniors stay around longer. And what a gift to the children to have the elderly wisdom there, and the parents to have that kind of support as well. There are so many benefits to creating this, aren't there? The list doesn't just go on and on.
It's fairly long, the list of benefits, and honestly, the more people you talk to, they even find some that you might not even think of. Like, for example, one of the mayors I met was in Cowichan, and he actually stated that each unit is basically an end unit on a building because it has so much natural light coming into it. And I mean, you could almost say it's almost inspired by nature with the honeycomb design, like the beehives.
Yes.
Just a smaller version of a beehive, but bringing people together and actually just having it so everyone's welcome instead of in isolation.
Yes, but the light is important, not only because you can actually, use solar panels or solar blinds, or, other ways of actually powering your house, but also we know that we need a certain amount of vitamin D. We need that light. It actually is something that really does feed our soul and our spirit and lifts people up. And again, a lot of these places that are built very tiny and small, there's very little light coming in there. So that light is actually something on a psychological approach is very, very important for people. And I don't think they realize, how much a light room or light house is very, very important to their psyche. And it just also is just so much more cheerful to live in a place that's bright and light, rather than the dark and tucked away into a cupboard. The design also is just so much nicer to look at from the outside, because it has character, and because each one of these little honeycomb apartments has its own identity within the collective, which is also what makes it so much more aesthetically nice.
And if, say, the builder wants to add balconies, it's relatively easy in the design. I can walk them through it. We can easily do that modification.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, then you can have outdoor space, like a place to barbecue on each of the units. So
you could even take kind of one of these honeycomb things and make, kind of the big gazebo for everybody gathering, having potluck nights where everybody brings a meal. I mean, again, this is what people are hungry for. This, it used to be you knew your neighbors, and your neighbors were there for you in times of trouble. And in today's world, it's like, oh, I don't know who they are, and we don't talk to our neighbors. And it's like, why, folks? You're on the same street. Get to know them.
Yeah.
You're really creating an area here where people can really comfortably get to know who they're living with.
The co-housing model, there is a co-housing kitchen on the ground floor of the building. It was inspired by Grace Kim. She is an architect based out of Vancouver. It goes between Vancouver, BC and Washington State. And she actually took part in the Canadian Co-housing conference, which was the last weekend of April. I was too busy to attend it, but overall, the TED Talk she did was very inspiring, and just having that one element in an apartment building changes it from an isolated building where each unit is individual to a community, which, I mean, it's such a huge difference for everybody.
Yeah. And it's also making something go, and of course, this is up to each place and each design, but you can create pet-friendly places, having a little section where it's cornered off for the doggies to run around, and because that actually is a huge thing in housing today, because it's so hard to rent a place if you have a pet. Oh, we don't want pets, too much trouble. And it really makes it hard. But we also know that how pets really are very, very healthy for a family, for children, for seniors, and how important it is to have that. And again, if you have a community where everybody knows each other's pet and everybody's looking out for each other, everybody can get those little puppy lugs and the cats. And, it's again, bringing people back down to that village mentality. And so the simplicity of what you're doing is something that's been around for thousands of years, but we lost touch with it. And you're bringing it back with the honeycomb design of it. You're also still giving people that individual design where they feel it's their place. They're not just part of a block lost in the 10,000 units that are in a high rise. You've created a community space where everybody can come together or rent out the space to have an event or whatever the case is. But I would imagine that in municipalities, that this is something that would be extremely beneficial, because the fact that it can bring people together from all different ages, and really would actually solve a great deal of the housing problem, because you don't need an awful lot of land for this per se, depending obviously what the rules and regulations are. But it is because it's bringing that community together on that diversity that I would imagine municipalities and mayors and things getting behind this, really liking the concept of it.
The ones I've met with, all of them love it. They are all for it. They want it. They want to see it in their communities. We just need people to now step up and go to these communities and start taking the next steps and finding the lots or the buildings that they could knock down and put this on, or the vacant lots and put a couple of these on. And there's so much potential there, like all across Vancouver Island, the mainland, BC, Alberta to back East Ontario. I mean,
yeah, I mean, it's one of these things that it literally can be adapted and adopted anywhere. And also, I would imagine it doesn't really matter on the environment, because you have the plan, but the materials can change according to what environment it's going into. So that is adaptable. But you have put some sort of unique ideas of materials in there to try and make it as eco-friendly as possible.
I have advised on some material considerations, but the building codes will, end of the day, determine the final design, and the engineering and of the building for the site and the wind loads will all play influence in how it's built, because it has to meet or exceed codes. I would love to see these buildings built as LEEDs Gold or above, because they're more than capable. Because those standards they're a bit more costly to reach, but then at the end of the day, the building is more cost effective to run, because it's more efficient. So
it's also the way that we need to go.
Yeah.
I mean, passive housing being around for 40 years, but it's really relatively new in North America. And when you look at the design of it, yeah, it might be around 10-15% more to actually build it initially. But the cost effectiveness over a period of time, never mind, not just the money savings, but just, the fact that you're actually keeping your energy in the house and generating the energy in the house instead of it just going out through the walls and through every single gap, it is already something that's so beneficial. And I think we're slowly beginning to look at that effectiveness, that it is really, really important to have that. And we're waking up to that fact, aren't we? That
Yes, we
yes,
are.
put in a little money initially. But as you said, the longevity of having to do repairs or anything else that's also going to be cost effective down the line.
Well, it's basically preventative. You get it dealt. You deal with this by building it better. There's less stuff has to be done later to maintain the building instead of building it to code and then running into like having to do more updates as the codes require down the road. You're basically exceeding the code, which is much more desirable for people living in it, and it also it'll get more attention too. It's a green building versus standard construction.
Mm-hmm.
Even, I mean, yes, it is still standard construction, but green, like dockside green or the living buildings that are around BC in the States, those ones, they draw so much more interest. University at Simon Fraser University is actually, they got their whole campus. What they're doing is the Living Building Challenge. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I could see this building on a large enough site, or a few of these on a large enough site, it could probably meet the requirements to meet the Living Building Challenge.
I mean, if you're looking at universities and things like this would be great, wouldn't it? Because you could have different blocks. And again, it's bringing the students from around the world together. We know that some of that housing on there is very old and run down, and that it's sometimes even hard for students because they're just in these little compartmental rooms and it's noisy because other people are partying. Here you could actually create a lot of like 500 square foot apartments where they have their own space. They can really concentrate on that work and those studies, and then have that meeting place where everyone can go to. So it's a very, I mean, as you said, your design really could be dropped anywhere for any situation. I'm going to give another scenario. I'm in my 60s, and at my age, most people are downsizing. We don't have the families at home anymore. We don't need the big house. But we're also bearing in mind that we are aging, and there's going to be some things or support that we're going to need down the road. So even if you go into an apartment, you're looking at, does this mean later I have to go into a home? I don't want to go into a home. You could create a wonderful society where people, even from 50s down, can go into an apartment and grow old with it, because again, you can have that support already built in there. A community nurse, or people who maybe cook food, or people who run around and do the shopping for people. They could all be living there under that same roof, but you're still giving the dignity and the independence that somebody wants to have. You have, we call not the yuppies. I've forgotten what we're called. But we've been around for a long time, and we're busy aging. And this would fit into the needs of that so much, because we don't want to be isolated behind a door and not know who we are, who our neighbor is. We would like to be within 10, 15 years of the age bracket of the people that are there. But it would be great to know that there's somebody who could do some shopping, or there's the cleaners that can come around and help, or there is a health nurse there if you need it, but you still got your independence. So you're giving dignity to people as well, which is really, really important. From a social point of view. So again, there's so many ways this can be used.
Yeah, going back to universities, I've actually met with one university on Vancouver Island, but I am open and I want to meet with more of them because they need student housing. They
Mm-hmm.
all need student housing, and if they're looking at ways and new designs, this is one where you can have student housing and families going to school without having to change too many things. Like it's all ready to go. Just if you have a space available, feel free to contact me and we can discuss how your university, your college can have campus housing across Canada, across the United States, even Europe.
Yes, yes. As I said, this is a design that can go anywhere. You're just changing the materials according to the temperatures of the place. But it's a basic design that really materials are not can be adapted to. But it's such a basic design that it's rather like Lego, isn't it? You can piece things together. You can go up as high. How high can you go
I
comfortably?
would say 10 stories, depending. You might be able to go 12, but again, the engineering
Mm.
will determine that end of the day.
But you also don't want to go too tall because you do want to keep it on that community basis. So,
Yeah, I think honestly, the 4 to 6 story buildings will be the most common being
mhm,
built because those are comfortable heights. They're still small apartments, and you can have your community, you can have your rooftop garden with the solar above it,
right.
and then other like family play areas and other gardens on the property itself. So you can have each individual community also come together as a much larger community, which is beautiful.
You're also seeing more and more people today wanting to grow their own vegetables and, be sustainable as possible. And so this is actually something that you can do. You can have a community vegetable garden where people can actually build that. And you've also got your millennials that go, I don't want the 4,000 square foot house that my parents had. I do want to live smaller. I do want to live more in a community where I know people and less detached. Even raising the children, they want to know they've got people there they can count on, they can count on each other. So there's a totally different swing, isn't there, from the big monster houses going into a smaller place where it does feel more community amongst millennials today.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, with builders, there's a lot of emphasis today on luxury homes and massive apartment buildings with small units, but the reality is we need to see more small apartment buildings because that's what they did in the 70s and 80s, which created the rental market we have today. But for some reason, we stopped in the 90s and the 2000s. So why aren't we going back to that?
Right.
Everyone wants
Yeah.
livable units, but they're hard to find, and they're usually always rented out. And
Yeah, it's
where can
it's
they go? Like basement suites, or do you
right.
have to
Well,
pay?
yeah. I mean, that's basically, isn't it? It's an old building that probably hasn't been maintained, or if you get into one of the new ones, they are so tiny, but everything about them is tiny about it. It's not like space being properly utilized, or again that light coming in, or even that sense of kind of community. It's just like you go into your little box, put your lid down, and that's it. And the cost of it is so expensive. How would yours be in cost ratio to what is out there? And obviously, you're talking here in on Vancouver Island, but just percentage wise, how would it be cheaper?
Cost ratios, my overall design cost is 5 to 15% cheaper depending on the market because my design fees are much lower than an architect. Construction cost wise, smaller buildings, I estimated around $250 a square foot, up to 6, 7 stories, or 7 stories to 10 stories. I would estimate closer to $350 a square foot. And I got this information by talking to a construction consulting firm in Victoria who actually does this type of work. So I was able to run them by what I'm doing, and they were able to run out these, well, give me the numbers, the
Right.
larger number to work with. So I was able to do some research and find that thankfully the smaller buildings don't cost the same as the larger buildings because you're not doing them all in concrete.
Right.
Yeah, so
And
there's
actually, even the concrete today has changed, hasn't it? It's so
it's
much more
gone up.
durable than it used to be.
It's also gone up in price, and
Right. True. Yes.
yeah, as it's also become more durable. Once people have to consider too, the concrete does have a carbon footprint, which should be considered in the building process. But there's probably ways of mitigating it or reducing your carbon footprint. I've heard there's carbon negative concrete out there.
Yes.
That would be really neat to bring into one of these larger buildings because then you have basically a carbon sink in the building instead of something that's putting out carbon.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And there are those materials out there. And yes, it probably will be initially a little more expensive to start off with. But again, let's look at the bigger picture. And I think this is what you've done here, and everything that you're doing is you're looking at the longevity picture. We do have a housing crisis right now. You do have maybe a family of 3 or 4 in a great big huge 4,000 square foot house. And then what happens when those kids leave home? How many go back home because they can't afford to live on their own? You know, I know people right now who've still got 2 kids at home. They've come back because they cannot afford the rents in Vancouver. It's gone ridiculously sky high. And of course, the salaries have not gone up, but the rental and the cost of living has. And this is really kind of the scenario everywhere in the world, isn't it? Housing has got so much. And this is why they're building these great big huge block things, but which I don't consider the answer because they look so institutional. They just don't look communicative at all. So what you've done here is that you're still maintaining some land space, not just all concrete block. You're still giving multiple housing, but you're also creating community where people can communicate each other. Because psychologically, the studies have shown people that just go from an office then into their little boxed apartments and they don't see people along the way and it's all concrete, really do develop some psychological problems. So there's so many other benefits to this kind of housing concept that's really important.
Yes, exactly. Also, when you have people wanting to move out, they have another challenge. They can't find a place to move out to.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
we need more either affordable market rate or student rental housing on the market today because, oh, you want to move out. Well, you can't, one, you can't afford it, or two, you can't find it. So both factors play into that. So if we can have more supply, the rental rate should hopefully maintain, or if there's more than enough supply, they might go down. But at least if we have more out there, then people actually have a place to go when they want to move out.
I think also when you're looking at a community, they go, oh, I don't want one of these great big, huge, big block things in here. We know there's a housing crisis and you're going to tear down all these beautiful old houses and you're going to put up this big monster. We don't want it. With your kind of design, you know, if you took 2 or 3 lots, you could put several of these on the lot, but aesthetically, they're not going to look like a big, huge concrete monster in there. There, you know, and for people that are living within the communities, I would imagine this would be so much more receptive for the fact that they do have a beautiful design, that the way you can place them around the lots, and the fact that they are bringing community together. So I can imagine there'd be less resistance from people in communities because of this design.
They'll probably still need to talk to the community, but it would be a lot more open-ended because it's not going to cover the entire lot and get rid of all the green space. It's going to take a smaller portion of the lot. You can still have your green space and the park space or the community areas, so you can get together on it, and it will be way more desirable for people living there or living near there who has to look at it every day.
Exactly. So you've got students who need housing while they're at their very expensive universities or colleges, you know, trying to make ends meet, 2 jobs, going to school just to be able to pay the rent. You've got young couples that are starting out, you know, they maybe want to save for that family home, or they start off in a 500 square feet and they end up with a 3-bedroom in here as the family grows. You've got, you know, middle-aged people that maybe suddenly there's divorce or singlehood come into their lives and it's like they're downsizing or they're out on their own. You've got seniors who don't want to go into a senior home but still want to be part of a community, still want to be around all the different ages. I can't see anybody here that couldn't benefit from this.
Everyone can benefit from this. It's finding now the people who actually can understand this concept and see this concept and utilize this concept, because they'll benefit from it too.
Right. That's precisely it.
Yeah.
So you've got the mayors on board, you know, a few mayors on board that really see this as being beneficial. And of course, you know what you're looking for, obviously the builders, the people that are actually out there building, is looking at how this can be such a wonderful concept for them to build. Because in actually building it, does it take more or less time than a
They would be
regular?
same amount of time because it's same construction methods, and end of the day.
And would these be, I suppose it would go down to each community whether these would be sold units or purely for rental.
It would determine, well, it depends who the person who's paying for the project. If it's an investor, they might retain the building as a rental building.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a developer, they might want to sell off individual units.
Right.
It comes down to who is the person putting this one up or putting them up, but that's their choice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm just thinking also, near hospitals, amount of nurses and doctors, and how expensive it is, because when you're around a hospital, generally the housing around there is really, really expensive, and how beneficial this would be, having nurses and doctors all living in one building, because they're all working peculiar hours and they can all be there, and they need to download, they need to the end of a 12-hour shift, and how beneficial that would be. I can just see universities, senior homes, things like autism, or mentally challenged, or any other type of people that are wanting to build something where it can then be that community, that how it just makes sense. It's like, where are we going to house these people? How are we going to do it? Well, you've created something that will do that. I know that there was somebody I was talking to, we're looking at individual housing pods for autism on a lot, with the central area where they could all come together, and that's where they were also monitored and looked after. Well, instead of all those separate housing on a lot, which takes up more space, this is something that can still give everybody their individualism, their own space to do their own thing, but still under that umbrella of community and coming together. Again, so many boxes, when we're talking to the builders out there, the developers out there, the investors out there, name any scenario and this fits into it.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's so simple too, which is like all these new buildings that are being considered or going through planning phases, some of them, they're super complex. Like, they're so unique designs, but they're only ever going to be built once.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all these huge design costs on those buildings, and it's only going to be built once. Why not have something that has lower design costs and can be built as many times as it's needed in any community?
And even though it is this design, they don't all have to look exactly the same, right?
Yeah, the developer can change the exterior, or the person who's building the building, at the end of the day, they can make the exterior to their own choice. They can do the more traditional, they could do a more modern. I mean, hey, it's up to you.
Right. So
green walls.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Different type of windows, all sorts of things. There's so many different ways they can do it, but basically it is a cookie cutter plan that can be taken anywhere. I mean, let's take it out of North America. Let's look at, other countries that are having massive housing problems. Let's even look at the refugee problem, which is enormous amount of, lack of housing. They're still in tents and just in great big huge warehouses. How this would help them feel like they still have a community together, but giving them that individualism and a chance to grow and a chance to feel that they belong. And I would even imagine, as this can be rather modular, it is something that perhaps even could be modularized and like Lego pieced together for something that's needed and then dismantled and moved elsewhere because of your design.
It probably could be done as a modular building. I would have to find someone who'd be interested in pursuing that route, but I'm sure there's other modular building styles that have been done. I don't see a reason why it couldn't be. It's just, one, someone wants to go that route, and two, we have to ask the questions on how
right
it can actually
and
be possible.
I think the possibility is there when there is a need. right? There's a possibility that there's always a way of finding a way of doing it. It's just the way you've actually got all these honeycomb things. Instead of being built as one unit, they can all be built individually that then could slot together in some way. Everything is possible, you're right? It's just looking at how far field this can go. So, I mean, although you would love, I mean, we really need to get government behind this. We need to get government planning behind this and to see how beneficial this is. Again, going back to, yes, they can pull down 3 or 4 houses, build a huge block, and it can house X amount of people, but are you still building that community-based thing? Building something like this, where it is going from the seniors to the young newlyweds to students to young families, in creating that community and all the benefits that it has for every single person there. I think, just looking at all the layers, it's I can't see why government won't want to get behind this. Cities won't want to get behind this because it just ticks the boxes.
Yeah, meeting with the provincial government is interesting, to say the least. They're very busy, and they're very hard to coordinate with because you have to go through so many levels of government to talk to the person you're supposed to talk to. And I mean, if they would have come in and approached me, I would be all ears. But I've tried approaching them, and I've got told to talk to this person, and go to this person, and go back to the first person. And
that's the way it goes. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's
and it's actually talking to somebody that knows somebody in the government that says you've got to listen. That's the thing, right? That's the reason why you're doing this show, is to show all the benefits. Show how easy this is, how adaptable, how adoptable, how expandable, how far-reaching it is, how many communities, how many settings, and how many people it can serve in whatever their area. Do they need it for students? Do they need it for seniors? Do they need it for newlyweds? Do they need it for families? Do they need it for whatever? Yes, 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 this complies. This gives what they need. Now it's just a question of sitting down with you and going, okay, how can we make this happen?
It'd be nice if I could meet with the provincial governments of each province and the federal government, because they all have initiatives for affordable housing.
Yes.
Yet they're not really, they're
the
not.
Doors are opening. Right?
Well,
the doors are opening.
I can't reach them. I want them to come to me.
No, you've got to go to them. And this is part of what you're doing right here, is letting them know you're here, you've got something, you want to sit down and talk with them because it's about the possibilities. And we know that in order to get to the people that we really want to speak to, there are so many other people that we speak to along the way, but that is what it's all about, that networking, that understanding. And we never know where that introduction is going to go to. Sometimes trying to go straight to the source doesn't work. Talking to someone else and the roundabout way, you're gathering that support and that momentum along the way to when it does open the door, they're going to pay more attention. So don't get despondent.
Yeah, very true.
What do you want?
Yeah. Well, with government, they have all these initiatives. It's impressive, saying they want to make such a huge difference into social housing. I guess, when am I going to meet the person who has the connection, who can get me talking to the minister, the Honorable Minister of Housing in Ottawa, or the Minister of Housing in BC? Because they're there, they're busy, but they're so busy.
No, never too busy for a good idea. All it is introduction. And that's where you can come in, folks who are listening and watching this today. Do you know somebody that can open up those doors? You can see the benefits of this, how massive a scale it goes, how it can come into a community. We know we cannot avoid this. Old big houses are going to come down, apartments are going to go up because there is a housing shortage. Instead of something that's just another block, having something that really is more building of a community, more invitational, that serves all ages together under one roof, is something you want to see in your community rather than just another concrete block. So if you want to see this in your community, then start talking. Start reaching out, start communicating with people about, I prefer to see this, or I'm even interested in being a part of this. I'm interested in having one of these apartments. I would love to know how I can make this happen, because it's not just up to Christopher here. You know, he's got the plan. He's willing to talk to anyone. But if you're the listener here and you can really see the benefits of this, start talking. Start talking to other people. You never know how that domino effect can happen, because the only way we're going to bring about this change and fulfill this need is by each one of us stepping up and communicating and making it happen. It doesn't happen on its own. And when you've got that momentum behind you of the people that really see the benefits and really see how it serves them, that's when you take it to the government, because now they see you've got wind behind your back. People are really interested, and that's the important thing. Just everything about it makes sense, right? Everything about it makes sense.
Back in March 2017, Bloomberg actually put out an article on the affordable housing crisis and the housing crisis in general. 54% of the rental market is made up of small apartments of 2 to 49 units. This honeycomb building covers 80% of that. It goes from 6 to 54 units.
Right.
And the statistics are coming from the United States, but Canada's in the same boat, Europe's in the same boat, Australia's in the same boat. Overall, we haven't been building these buildings. We need to build these buildings, because we need more small apartments end of the day, because they are a huge part of actually addressing the lack of rental units everywhere. Livable rental units everywhere, because there are some going out there today. They're 2-bedroom in like 650 square feet. You don't have a living room at that point. It's kitchen, dining room, no living room. How are you supposed to enjoy your space?
Yes, you just feel claustrophobic all the time, you know, closed in, and you want something that, even if it is small square footage, is designed in a way that it has more open space, and, you know, the bright lights in the windows automatically makes everything look bigger and makes you feel that you're in more spaciousness. And having a design of that honeycomb, giving it a shape instead of just little square box, you know, automatically also just makes people feel that they're not just being picked up and put back in the shoebox.
I've had a bunch of people I've spoken to, including the mayor, say that my bedroom sizes in the honeycomb design are actually rather large, which is a good thing, because that means you have space for a good, comfortable queen or king size bed. Your nightstands, there's closet space, but you have space in there instead of walking into a room where the bed barely fits and the door can barely open. Like it actually feels like a home.
Right.
It doesn't feel really cramped and claustrophobic.
Yeah, and there are so many of those places where the bedrooms, and you think, okay, what size bed am I meant to put in here? Because if I put in a king size, that's wall to wall. You know, a queen size, then I'm inching my way. So now you're talking about a single, but there's 2 of us. You know? So yes, it's all great that they're designing these small spaces, but are they shrinking the people down to fit into them? Because I can't see that happening.
Yeah, that they should be making the apartment buildings, well, at least for 2 and 3 bedroom units, they should be making them with people in mind. But it seems to be profits kind of supersede the people, instead of the people superseding the profits.
But again, what you've got is that community space too, where people can go down into one communal space and, you know, even if they cook their dinner at home, they can go down into this communal space and share with other people, you know, not feel alone. Because going back to the psychological isolation that people are going through today, feeling lonely, this is not just an aging thing. We're looking at so many of the youth feeling disconnected and lonely. They don't want to go to bars to meet people, or they're not into this or into that, but they feel very, very isolated. And you're creating something here where people actually can leave their apartments and go into a central space where people can actually know their neighbors and feel a part of a family, part of a community. And especially for people who are leaving home for the first time, having somebody else of different ages and different levels of their journey in life, it doesn't feel like suddenly they've been thrown into, the lion's den where nobody knows who they are. They feel like they're part of that community, and that then transpires into, their schoolwork and everything else they do is just so much more beneficial because they feel they've got a home to come back to. So again, community, really, really important. Something that we've let lapse. We can see all the lack of the benefits of, isolating people, that it really is about people coming back together, supporting one another, all ages, learning from one another, and celebrating one another and how important it is. Your design does that, and it can be picked up and put in any community, in any country, in any situation, anywhere.
Yeah, it's almost like, why hasn't someone came up with this before? But then again, the way things have been done, no one's questioned it. They think the square is fine. But there's so many innovations in the building industry. It's almost like you could miss something that's huge, and this is one of them. So this is a huge thing, a huge advantage, and to be part of it early on, it will mean a lot for the communities they're being built, and it will also mean that you're doing good for the people. You're helping people.
Yes.
On top of that, so you can feel really good about it.
Yeah. I mean, again, the way the housing is built, I'm sure it could be more cost effective in the building of it. It requires less land, but it's also giving land back to the people instead of feeling that they have nowhere to go, no gardens. Because I know that in Vancouver West, they keep wanting to close parks down to build another high rise. We don't need more people in there. People need green space, places to go, and you're creating that on one lot where you can have 2 or 3 of these honeycomb buildings there, and there is that land, that community, that park, that place that people can share. We have to stop looking at just like, let's just pack them in, give them housing, pack them in, maximize the profit. And we have to start looking at the other issues. And because we've been ignoring those, we've created this problem of isolating people. And it's very, very important that people go back to realizing the village mentality, the community mentality, because that actually then becomes the equilibrium balance of what we need in our society, because it's a huge hole. And you're created something that just, again, ticks all the boxes. So how do people get to be a part of it? You're going to speak to anyone that can see this, that wants to take it somewhere, right? So you are open to conversation.
Yeah, they can contact me. I guess near the end of this interview, I'll have my contact information. It'll be available. They can go to my website. Yeah, anyone who wants to be a part of this to make a difference in the community, I'm all ears. Just
well, give your website now, love. Give your
website is terrafloorplans.com. There is a 90-second video on the website, and I'll be putting up a short 5-minute video talking more about these benefits of the honeycomb plan. And to contact me, you can email me at terrafloorplans@gmail.com or Christopher@terrafloorplans.com.
And Terra is Terra.
Yes.
The spelling of it. A simple concept, ticks so many boxes. It serves so many people. It serves so many communities. It could be adopted and adapted anywhere in the world. And it's just, you've got this beautiful basic idea that really you're open to it being adjusted and adaptable to what anybody's need is. And so if you know someone in the building community, if you know somebody in the government, if you know somebody who's just wants to get behind this, that thinks it's a great idea, reach out to Christopher, because this is it's not just him coming up with a great idea and that's nice. It's about, what are we going to do about to make this idea come into fruition? How do we step up and even introduce people or just talk about it and share the idea? Because once it gathers momentum, that domino effect will really happen. But we have to get it into that momentum. We have a crisis, folks. We have a housing shortage. We have a great deal of isolation and loneliness amongst the community, a disconnect. We have a problem with seniors versus students versus young families in housing. This is something that really can resolve so many of those issues. So talk to your own municipality, talk to your mayors, talk to your government, talk to your aldermen, and just say, I really love this idea. How can we push it forward? Because that's how we make things happen, right?
Right. And I'll be connecting with more mayors whenever I can, more developers, and anyone else who is interested. Just contact me at terrafloorplans@gmail.com, or check out the website at www.terrafloorplans.com, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, exactly. It's the idea is there. It's brilliant. It's so many. So let's activate it, make it happen. Start talking to people, folks. Please share this with somebody else. Look at the website, share the website, reach out and talk to Christopher, because we don't know we know what's possible. We've told you what's possible today and how many boxes that it takes, but we don't know who's going to be the activator until we start talking. So let's activate this idea. Let's get it into fruition. Let's start building this, because the benefits are just way too big to be ignored. Christopher, wonderful that you're following this plan, that you are bringing this to the community, and stay with it. Just dig in there. And once that gets going, and that first mayor to get behind it, and that first builder to get behind it and build one, once they see it, there's going to be no stopping it, because it serves so many.
Exactly. Just finding more people who want to jump on and see the concept become reality, and then see it spread across Canada, United States, Europe.
Anywhere in the world. Yeah. Anywhere in the world. And again, you've got the plan. Whatever your country's weather is, materials can be adapted. It's the plan. It's something that's so simple. And everywhere in the world needs to have something that's more community-based. Everywhere. Because this is not just a North American problem. It's everywhere in the world. We need to provide more housing, but we need to do it in a way that serves the collective community. So it's really, really important. Thank you so much for Christopher for sharing with us today.
You're welcome, Sarah.
And folks, please get behind this. This is a great idea. Share it with everybody that you do know. You just don't know who is going to be that one person that says, I like it, let's do it. The only way we get good ideas out there is when somebody says, let's do it. So let's get it shared. Until next time, folks, bye for now. For more wonderful shows like this, please go to selfdiscoveryradio.com, podcasts, and see our lineup. And if you wish to support us, we have a funded button. Please stay tuned for our next show.